Okay, you can go
All
ahead.
right. Fire Protection Board meeting of June 2nd, 2022 will come to order. I'll just ask for, as a request, we have a request to amend the agenda. I'll entertain a motion from the members.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, so we're going to amend the agenda to accommodate the applicants, and we'll go into applications. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, agenda is being modified. So we're jumping to new business.
Who made the motion? I'm sorry, I was looking down for a second. It was Keith, and who seconded that? So, okay, thank you. Go ahead.
All right, so we have application review, 2 applications. David Israel and Frank Savino. You said one of them had a request to have to be off early. Karen, which was it?
It was Mr. Savino. Can you hear us, Mr. Savino?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. There you are. Okay. Yes. Frank did ask if we would take him a little bit earlier because he has another commitment. So.
All right. So first application is Frank Savino, or to be considered. Frank Savino is applying for an F1. I assume everyone has had a chance to review his application. His application, just for information purposes, you would have already known this if we followed you. Mr. Savino's application was reviewed on the 12th of April, and it was denied. And it was basically the reason you must show work experience with dates and duties of employment in the fire protection, and also show related instruction in the fire protection industry. So I'm just making the board aware of it. He's been previously denied. I guess there was a request to come before the full board, and I'll let I guess Mr. Israel, you have the floor. You could.
Mr.
Wait, I'm
Savino.
sorry, Mr. Savino. Mr.
My name
Savino.
is Frank Savino.
Frank Savino.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, this is Paul Grabowski, staff attorney for the department. Before we begin, we do have to swear in Mr. Savino, so this is formal and he does have to be sworn in.
Go ahead. That's
Okay, so Mr. Savino, if you could please raise your right hand, and when I'm finished administering the oath, please state I do. Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you are about to give concerning the case now in question shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
all right, Mr. Savino. You heard what I had to say. Your application was denied. There was no work experience for installation provided. Based on the review committee, it basically, it's, I guess it's of my opinion, you're basically an alarm installer. We didn't see any work experience for installation and fire protection. And your license that you submitted is in the city of New York. It's not the state of New York. So I want to make the full board aware of that. So if you'd like to speak on your behalf, go right ahead.
Sure. Okay. Well, let me just start with the denial letter that I received, and I'll address the 2 points that you just made. My denial letter, which was emailed to me on April 12th, it was reviewed by the State Application Review Working Group, had 5 points on it, okay? The first point was insufficient proof of registered apprenticeship for the F2 license category. I don't believe it's applicable because I'm not applying for an F2 license, okay? Next item was insufficient proof of 8,000 hours of on-the-job training / work experience for an F2 license. Again, I'm not applying for an F2. The next item, insufficient proof required 4,000 hours of on-the-job training work experience for the F1 license category. I believe that's incorrect because I have actually 84,000, not the 4,000, I have 84,000, okay, of work experience over my 42 years experience in the industry. The next item, insufficient proof of the required 576 hours of related instruction of F2 license category. Again, I'm not applying for the F2 license. And then the next item, it says no equivalent out-of-state license. That's incorrect because I actually have a state of New Jersey all fire suppression system license, which I submitted with my application. A copy of that was submitted with my application. If I look at the cover letter, yes, I sent a copy of my state of New Jersey permit as an all fire protection contractor business permit. This permit authorizes me to install and service fire alarm systems, sprinkler systems, or any type of fire extinguishing system. And New Jersey does have different levels of licensing. They have just a fire alarm license, a portable fire extinguisher license, sprinkler license. I'm licensed by the state of New Jersey as an all, meaning I can do sprinkler work, clean agent systems, dry chemical, kitchen hood, portables, etc. So with all due respect, the statement that I do not have a state license is incorrect. Let me just say something about the New York City license. I am licensed. I've been licensed by the city of New York for over 30 years. That is probably, I would say, the most difficult fire suppression piping license to get in the country. As of about 2 or 3 years ago, there were only about 30 or 40 Class A licenses in the city of New York. To get that license, which I had gotten over 30 years ago, it took me about 2 years. I had to prove my experience in the suppression business. That is a suppression license. It's not an all like New Jersey. Plus, I had to pass a very, very difficult test. Also, that license requires annual. They changed it recently to biannual continuing education requirements, as New Jersey also has continuing education requirements. I've had the New Jersey license for over 20 years, and that also has continuing education requirements. So I am more than an alarm installer. And, you know, alarm systems, and I consider myself to be an all-around expert in fire protection with my 42 years, and that's what my company does. Because all fire protection systems are all interrelated. If you're going to do a clean agent system, a suppression system, even a sprinkler system, knowledge of alarm systems is very, very important because of the detection requirements, supervisory requirements, et cetera. So having very, very broad knowledge is a good thing to have, okay, not a bad thing. So with all due respect, the denial letter that I got was incorrect, okay, for the reasons that I stated, all right? So if I could just continue with my presentation, you know, my letter disputing my denial referenced the statute that was actually passed by the Connecticut legislature, all right? And really what the statute requires is that for an F1 license, all right, satisfactory evidence, I'm going to read word for word, satisfactory evidence of education and experience in fire protection sprinkler systems work as defined in subdivision 9 of section 20-330, and who has passed an examination which has demonstrated competence in all aspects of the trade, okay? So the statute really just requires evidence of education and experience, okay? So my 42 years certainly qualifies as the experience along with the educational requirements of the licenses that I hold, all right? If you then go to the regulatory regulations of Connecticut state agencies, which really codifies the statutory requirements, okay? If you look at the regulatory requirements of the state of Connecticut, section 20-332-6A, okay, for an F1 license, which is an unlimited fire protection sprinkler contractor's license, okay? I'm gonna read it word for word. The holder of this license may do all fire protection sprinkler work as defined in section 20-330, which I previously read, of the Connecticut General Statutes, A person must have at least 2 years as an F2 journey person, okay, which I think was referenced in the rejection letter, okay? I didn't have the F2 journey person requirements, okay? But here's the operative word, or have equivalent experience to qualify for the F1 examination, okay? So it's not an and situation that the regulations specify. It's an or. And 42 years experience, okay, compared to the journeyman requirements, I think certainly abundantly, more than abundantly, qualifies as equivalent experience. Now, I've submitted other background information, including participation in NFPA requirements, my association with Sprinkler Association, I represented the Fire Suppression System Association, which is a national association to the International Building Code Council on code hearings. So I'm an all-around fire protection expert, okay? I'm very, very well respected in the city of New York. Engineers call me every other day asking me for advice and, gee, how should we do this? How should we do that? So, if you do a little bit of research, I can get you more references, but really, I certainly do qualify both with regard to the Connecticut statute and also the state regulations which codify the statute, all right? And I don't think that the intent of the legislature, okay, and the regulators who wrote the regulations was to exclude people like me, okay? I have a great reputation. I have a lot to offer to Connecticut, and that I don't believe anybody could really believe that was the intent. And I still would have to pass the test. If I'm not telling the truth and I really don't know anything about fire suppression technology, then there's nothing to worry about. I'm not going to pass the test, okay? Hopefully the test is an indicator, as the statute requires, or the regulations requires, that will gauge my competency in this technology. So I think that I've demonstrated, to summarize, I've demonstrated that I comply with the statute, I comply with the regulations, and there's no reason why I can't move on to the, no justifiable reason, I should say, for why I can't move on and to take the test. I'm done.
All right, well, Mr. Savino, you keep stating you're not applying for the F2, but you're also leaving out a critical part. The prerequisite for the F1 is to hold the F2 for 2 years. I know you're stating all these 42 years of experience, but is your application, or is read all the documentation, the indications where your field is in alarms? I mean, your company may be doing this, but we want to see the state of Connecticut. You say New York is one of the most stringent. Well, we like to believe Connecticut is one of the most stringent. So we want to make sure that the applicant that's applying for the license, because this is an unlimited license in the state of Connecticut, is qualified. That's why we asked for the proof of 8,000 hours of on-the-job training, 576 hours of related instruction, which neither has been provided. I mean, you're saying 42 years. We're asking for dates and duties. That's another thing with a notarized letter that says, well, I worked on such and such a job, where we could see that there was actual application in the fire protection industry, not broad scope with alarms and devices and maybe design or whatever. So I'll let the other board members weigh in, but I'm just explaining to you why the application was denied previously.
Well, in fact, you mentioned that your requirement is that for the F1 is that you hold the F2 for 2 years. Where is that in the statute, and where is that in the regulation of Connecticut state agencies? I've got both in front of me right now. Okay. All right. Again, I'm going to read the regulation. A person must have at least 2 years as an F2 journey person. That's what the point you were making, or have equivalent experience. So there's really two pathways that the regulations provide for. All right. Two pathways. So I'm not choosing the pathway of 2 years of F2. I'm choosing equivalent experience. And equivalent doesn't mean exact, okay? Equivalent means of similar weight.
So just to chime in here, this is Paul Grabowski again for the department. There are those two pathways. There's an equivalency pathway. So you don't have to hold the Connecticut F2. You can have a comparable license in another state, but it's got to be comparable or greater than Connecticut. So you look at what does it take to get the F2? Do you have that comparable training, on-the-job training and education, right? The apprenticeship program, the 4 years. And then do you have the 2 years that would be equivalent journeyman experience? So you're looking for a total of 6 years equivalency of what you would have in Connecticut to obtain or to sit for rather the F1.
So, so then really what would be the definition of equivalent experience?
It would be about the hours that you've had. You have the proper hours. You're saying you have 84,000 hours. So you have, it'll be a total of 6 years. So it's 4 years showing that matches closely to the apprenticeship program, right? And then 2 years of what a journey person in Connecticut would do. So if you're saying you have the 84,000 hours, maybe the board needs to ask some questions about the type of work you were doing to see how it compares to what a Connecticut journey person would be doing or a Connecticut apprentice. And then there is the education component too. But there's also, the board could decide, so then there's satisfactory, the board can say that there's satisfactory education and experience. So that really is the board's decision to say, hey, we think that your education with your extra experience here of 42 years, whatever that is, and the board can ask questions to say, hey, what is that 42 years of experience? And passing a test, that can also get you equivalency. So if you've passed the test to become an equivalent type F1, along with all that extra experience, and the board finds that satisfactory, that could get you equivalency as well.
Right.
Those are the pathways.
So answer your question, Mr. Grabowski. When I started in the industry, I'm the president of a company now that has about 130 employees. When I started in this industry 42 years ago, I obviously wasn't the president of the company. I worked for Walter Kidda. I worked for a company called Crown Fire Protection. And when I started, I actually was filling fire extinguishers. I was actually hanging and cutting and threading and installing pipe. Obviously, I'm 67 years old now. I'm not lugging pipe wrenches anymore. But when you start out in an industry 42 years ago, which I did 42 years ago, that's where you start out. Okay. So really, I've done that. All right. And then with regard to the education, as I mentioned, I have continuing education requirements for the license that I hold, both in New York and in New Jersey. All right. And that spans 30 years in New York and about 22 years in New Jersey. So I have continuing education requirements there. Are they identical to the F2? No, but are they equivalent? Yes, they are. Okay. And on top of that, I'm very, very active, and I sent you the samples in the Automatic Fire Sprinkler Association, okay, both national and local. I'm very, very active in the Fire Suppression System Association. I go to every annual meeting, they have technical sessions. So I'm a very high level person in this industry, in the fire suppression industry. I work 50, 60 hours a week, and learning and education is my passion. That's why I'm like one of the top guys in the whole country in this technology, if I could kind of blow my own horn a little bit. So to answer your point about the type of work that I've done, yeah, I've done it. I'm 67 years old. I don't do that anymore, okay? Nobody that builds himself up to my level, basically does the entry level work anymore, okay? The basic work. My education, requirements for my other state license and city license of New York requires the education along with all the technical seminars. I'm going to NFPA next week. I attend all the technical seminars on alarms and suppression. So I'm very well rounded. So I certainly, with the 42 years of experience, the other license, I more than abundantly have the educational equivalencies.
By virtue of what you're saying, one of your earlier statements and some of your documentation, again, it almost leads to the limited license type in this state, because you're talking about suppression systems. And you're, when you started with Kitty and you were doing, threading and the various tasks you were explaining, it sounds like for, dry chemical systems, which is
Well, no, that's not true. I've installed all types of systems, okay, including sprinkler systems, okay? When you're a medical doctor, all right, and you're a cardiologist, you may not do brain surgery, but that doesn't mean you can't become a general practitioner, okay, because you haven't done brain surgery, all right? So does everybody have certain strengths of areas? Yeah, of course they do, okay? I know sprinkler guys that don't know the difference between, a smoke detector and a heat detector, okay? But they're in the fire protection industry. Yeah, so yeah, I would say that I would consider myself to be stronger in special suppressant agent systems, but I'm also very competent in sprinklers too. I'm a generalist, and that's what this license is. It's a general license. If you look at the scope, it includes clean agent systems, sprinkler systems, dry chemical systems, foam systems, etc. And I have knowledge of all of those systems.
It's not a general license, it's an unlimited license.
Well, no. When I say the word general, basically it encompasses all systems. All right. Do I know more about some systems than other? Yes, I do. But I know enough about all of these systems to qualify for that license.
Okay, can another board member ask questions?
Excuse me, I didn't
Any
hear
other
that.
board members have anything to say?
I'll ask a question. I'm not sure if I overlooked it in the documents, but did you serve and approve apprenticeship program that's equivalent to what you need to have in the state of Connecticut to apply for the license?
When I got into the industry in the 1970s, I did not choose that pathway. Okay, I chose on the job training with very experienced people. That's the pathway that I chose when I got into the industry in the 1970s.
Okay, our apprentices, and I can just speak for what I know of, is we served an apprenticeship and work with very smart individuals that also served an apprenticeship that teach you the 8,000 hours, take the test, and so forth. That's all I have.
Anything further from anybody? Any board members?
Just education wise, do you have anything educational experience or classroom experience or?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the city of New York requires annual continuing education for any of their licensees. They recently, about 5 years ago or so, they changed it to biannual. So since I got the license in approximately early 90s, like 90 and 91, somewhere in there, I had to attend annual continuing education. Okay, New Jersey basically had a similar requirement. I am very active in both the NFPA. I attend their annual meeting almost every year. Okay, I don't think I missed maybe 2 or 3 years in the last 30 years, and I make it a point to learn about all the different fire protection technologies that are out there. And so I sent some of my NFPA educational experience with my application. I'm very active in the American Fire Sprinkler Association, a national association. I've attended about every single national meeting for the past 10 years or so, probably 7 or 8 annual meetings over the past 10 years. I've actually presented at the AFSA. I've been a presenter at that association. Okay. And so I'm very active in sprinkler technology, and I'm also very active in the Fire Suppression System Association for about 30 years. I've actually presented there, and I represent the Fire Suppression System Association with the state of New Jersey Contractor Advisory Board. I'm the representative, okay, for the Fire Suppression System Association to the state of New Jersey, okay. I also represent the Fire Suppression System Association to the International Code Council, all right. So my qualifications really are stellar, okay, in the suppression, extinguishing agent, sprinkler industry. And I also have stellar credentials in detection and alarm. I probably know more than 99% of the people. And as I said, that's very, very important when you're doing a pre-action sprinkler system, a deluge system, okay? You really need to know about detection, okay? It's all one system, okay? It's not just about pipes and nozzles. So my knowledge is very, very critical for all of that technology that all goes together, as well as, you know, basically being a well-rounded fire protection person. So to answer your question, yes, I've had plenty of education and training throughout my career.
The only thing I'd add is, but it's not classroom, it's a continuing ed is what you're saying? Which are just seminars that you go and listen to someone speak?
It's classroom from the standpoint, yes, it's classroom, you know, when you go to the American Fire Sprinkler Association, you know, you're sitting, you know, in a meeting room and there's a presenter. When you're sitting at NFPA, there's, they only like qualified people. You're sitting with, you know, a guy who's you know, an expert in his field. Otherwise, you don't get invited to the NFPA to talk.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Like I previously stated, you know, your application was denied back in April 12th. Requested you show work experience with dates, you know, notarized letter with dates and duties of employment in the fire protection industry, fire sprinkler industry, not fire, you know, fire sprinkler industry, and to show you related instruction in the same industry. So
so what you were kind of saying is I get penalized for knowing more about a lot of other stuff in the fire protection industry. So I'm getting penalized for that.
no, but it's not if you throw enough stuff against the wall, something's going to stick. It's like, you know, I reached out, like I said, you know, when this arose back, you know, a month or so ago, actually 2 months ago, again, I didn't realize that, you know, I looked at the license, okay, New York, overlooked the fact, shame on me, that it's a New York City license, not a New York State license. There's no state license in the state of New York for fire protection.
Again, then look at if you need a state license, then look at the New Jersey license.
I may have, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to open up the files right now and see what, you know, on the application there. But
I would just add here that
the population of New York City is actually greater than the population of Connecticut. So there's another equivalency.
Size, you know, size doesn't matter as far as population. We like to think
Okay.
Connecticut.
All right, then just look at New Jersey then.
and I would add
The key question is it equal to or better than? That's the determination factor here. We're
right,
not.
and it
Go
could
ahead.
be from New York City. It doesn't have to be from the state. New York has a different regulatory scheme. So if the New York City license, the regulatory agency, has something with comparable requirements, then you could find that the New York City
Which they
license
do,
has equivalence.
because in New York City, in order to qualify to take the test, you needed 7 years of practical experience. And they drill down for 2 years, contacting previous employers and asking me, what exactly did Mr. Savino do? They also tried to deny me the license for 2 years, okay? And after they uncovered every stone that could be uncovered, they concluded that there was really no reason to deny me allowing to take the test, okay? So actually, New York City was more stringent than Connecticut, okay? Because as I said, their requirement was 7 years of practical experience.
Do you, may I chime
Excuse me?
in? May, do you have any of the documentation that when you got your New York license
Yes,
regarding?
I
your-
do. Yeah, I have all that documentation, sure.
Well, that would
Yeah, I
show
have
your,
all that.
that would show your on-the-job experience and education experience?
Well, you know, that was like 1990, okay, or 92, so I forget, the early 90s. So, you know, if they asked me for a letter, you know, from an employer that I had, you know, 10 years prior, I may or may not have that letter, okay? I probably don't. I probably don't. But I could show you the statute for New York City that applied, and with the 7 years experience requirement.
Oh, Richard, Richard, you sat on the last review there. I'll ask you, I mean, have you seen any change as far as information?
Well, I think he sounds a lot better right now. And I can certainly appreciate the fact that, 42 years ago, there probably was no formal education except in limited areas. Maybe a local union hall 42 years ago would have a mandatory education component, but open shops may not have. And I think the weight of all his years of experience at this point and all the continuing education courses and active in NFPA and AFSA and having the New Jersey license as well as the New York City license, I think it shows plenty of experience at this point.
And again, I still would have to pass the test,
Yes.
right? I mean, that'll really
Yes.
be the real indicator.
Yeah,
Correct.
If
doesn't
I
Jer-
know my stuff, I pass the test, I should qualify.
Richard, does New Jersey have similar requirements as Connecticut?
I'd have to take when I got scheduled for this meeting here, I didn't get all the backup documents again. So I was trying to dig them out, but I couldn't find them from the working group meeting. But so I would say yes, they do. I always thought New Jersey had a very robust licensing program. And just from his speaking, and I did read through some of his documents that I did find, I think that the 42 years of experience is overwhelming, and you shouldn't be expecting a person to go back and take some basic blueprint reading course or basic courses in NFPA 25 or 72 or whatever when they have that type of experience. And it appears he has ownership and control of a huge company, and he worked his way to that position.
Thank you.
Well, I just opened it up and I'm looking at your the application, and I'm reading through, and let's say certification of the state of New Jersey, appointing you as a member of the Fire Protection Equipment Advisory Committee. Copy of page 12, that 72, which that is alarm signaling, which attests to the fact that and when I'm reading, again, what I read is what I interpret, that you're an alarm man, plus your statements that you worked in the fire suppression, what I referred to as hood systems, and your copy of your New York Master Fire Suppression Piping Contractor License, which I don't have full knowledge of what that equivalency of that license is, Mr. Savino.
Well, the New York license the master fire suppression piping license has nothing to do with electrical, has nothing to do with alarms. It's strictly an installer's license. It doesn't have anything to do with engineering. It allows me to install any type of sprinkler. Basically, it's the same scope as in your regulations, okay, which basically has the installation, repair of sprinkler systems, underground mains, special extinguishing agent systems like clean agent systems, dry chemical. It's basically almost identically to the scope in your regulations. The New York City almost identically, I would say identically mirrors the Connecticut regulations, all right? And really New Jersey, also my license in New Jersey goes a little bit beyond that, because my New Jersey license not only licenses me for any type of sprinkler system or fire suppression system, but also alarms. So again, New Jersey has different levels of licensing, and they chose to basically create a category that they call all, that encompasses also alarms, okay? So again, just because I'm an expert and very knowledgeable in alarm and detection should not penalize me with regard to my application. If anything, it should enhance it, because as I told you, having very good knowledge of detection systems and alarm systems really is very, very necessary when it comes time, when it applies to sprinkler systems. Think of pre-action sprinkler systems, think about deluge systems, even wet sprinkler systems. The monitoring requirements for sprinkler systems, is very, very, detailed and specific. So knowing that technology is good. It's not bad.
Like I say, it's always been my experience, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove that you have the experience in the fire protection industry. What we like to, what is ideally is completion of an apprenticeship, bona fide apprenticeship, whether it's, whatever state that, but it's, again, it's bona fide, could be federally recognized or whatnot, with a minimum of 8,000 hours of OJT and 576 hours of related instruction. Again, I'm cruising through your application, and again, everything indicates in there your specialty is alarms and suppression systems, like the hood type, which is basically a limited F3, F4 license in the state of Connecticut. So I'm trying to read through.
Mr. Kowalski, yeah, right, I agree. The burden of proof is on the applicant, and I've proven that with what I've submitted, okay? And you said what you like is the 8,000 hours, but that's not what the statute and the regulations dictate and require. It's not what you like, it's what the statute and what the regulations say, not what you like, okay? And yeah.
I'll rephrase the like. The requirement is 8,000, the equivalency, or the 8,000 hours, but the proof is the bona fide apprenticeship.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
I have 84,000 hours of experience and the continuing education that goes along with it. The state of New Jersey.
You would have to prove that. You would have to submit that. We can't just take your word for it.
Well, I think that if I can show you the continuing education requirements for the state of New Jersey and the city of New York, okay, over the course of 30 years, would that satisfy you?
And the on the job hours that you would need to be equivalent. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chair.
I guess really what it comes down to is that you're really bent on, you have to have the apprenticeship, okay? You have to have, that is really where it's your interpretation, okay?
Or the equivalent.
Let me interject a second.
Sure.
we have accepted, you threw that word like, but we have accepted in the past a notarized letter from an employer that states the dates and duties of your employment in the fire protection industry. That's the equivalency to the apprenticeship, Mr. Savino. It's if somebody's willing to put on a piece of paper, make a sworn statement that you had at least 8,000 hours in fire protection, and you had to train, the related instruction, then that's equivalency. But not to say that I've got, you could have been, for 42 years, you could have been driving a truck for that company. That doesn't make you, qualified in the fire protection industry.
Sir, I am the employer in this case, and by virtue of my application, this is what I'm swearing to under oath today, okay?
Yeah, but you talked about when you worked for Kitty back in the beginning.
Excuse me?
You talked about when you worked for Kitty back in the beginning, when you were, filling fire extinguishers and thread and pipe. Didn't you make that statement?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so I mean, go back to that, and if you could prove that documentation.
Well, my problem is I did that job in the 1970s, and the operation I worked for, Walter Kittis Sales and Service, was the name of the operation. They're no longer in business. The guy who ran it died 20 years ago. So to ask me to go back, 40 years and get letters from employers is really, I don't think, fair and reasonable. Okay. I mean, I think that, what I've submitted in my application, which was voluminous, all right? 6 years of payroll records, okay? So how many hours is that? That's 12,000 hours, indicating I worked for United Fire. A certification to the state of New Jersey, appointing me to be on an advisory committee. My copy of my New Jersey all fire protection contractor license, my New York City license, some of the educational. I mean, I think that it kind of paints a picture, a copy of my company brochure stating all the things that it kind of, I think, paints a very clear picture of what I do. All right. And what I do is I do a lot, and I know a lot.
Mr. Chairman, I think what you said, I agree with, is he shows that he does the work of an F3 or an F4, not a fire sprinkler journeyman person, woman. He can't prove he's been trained to do everything that's covered under that license. He shows the training and stuff to do an F3 or an F4. I think we're going to keep going around in a circle here until he can show, like everybody else who holds a license in the area, proof that he's done this. I think we're going to sit here for 5 more hours and talk about this. That's my opinion. So, thanks.
Why would I be in the American Fire Sprinkler Association, okay, for 10 years if I'm not engaged in that technology? Why would I do that? Why would I show NFPA seminars on that go back several years on sprinkler technology if that's not the business and the technology that I'm engaged in? Why would I do that? Because I planned this Connecticut hearing 5 years ago?
We're not saying that you're lying about anything, but you need to just show the proof of what we're looking for, that you had the experience. And I agree with Wayne. You're going to just keep going round robin here.
If I may interject, and again, if he's got the New Jersey license for sprinkler work, he's got New York City license for sprinkler work, they have similar requirements that we have. Why would they have given it to him if he didn't have the clear requirements at the time when they researched him?
Anthony, we don't know if they have the same requirements. Nobody's looked into this. I've seen people that didn't do an approved apprenticeship program from closer states not get approved for licenses. And just because somebody comes on and tells us everything they've done, I think it needs to be looked into more. And
then we need to find out what it takes to get if they have the similar requirements, New York City and New Jersey. And if they do, then I would think that's an equivalent.
Tony, you could also have, in this state, we have grandfather, it was grandfathering. When licenses took effect, people were grandfathered in. It's the same thing we've had over the years. People that were grandfathered that let the license lapse and they reapply. They say, well, I had a license for so many years. And well, where's your apprenticeship? Well, I didn't do it. I was grandfathered. And we say, well, you have to show
Right.
the completion of an apprenticeship program that has the requirements to sit for that test. And that's all we're asking in this case is for Mr. Savino to provide the information showing that he's got the 8,000 hours dedicated to the fire protection, not NFPA 72 alarms or hood systems, dry chem and all that type. That's like Wayne said, that's a different license, the F3, F4. I mean, that's, it kind of leans.
I want to just read you, if I can interrupt, I apologize. The New York City requirements for the license that I've had for 30 years, okay? An applicant for a master fire suppression piping contractor certificate shall submit satisfactory proof establishing that the applicant has had at least 7 years prior experience in the design and installation of fire suppression piping systems, or 4 years in the design and installation of plumbing systems, and 3 years in the design and installation of fire suppression piping systems in the United States for the class of license for which the applicant is made, okay? And again, I've got the Class A license, which mirrors your F1, and I could read that to you.
If I may interject, what you just read, that sounds like a carte blanche license. I mean, you're talking plumbing, fire protection, suppression.
Well, when this was passed 30 years ago, they did not want to exclude plumbers that had been in the field for many years and they were doing sprinkler work. Okay, I don't have a plumbing license. I'm not representing that I have any knowledge of plumbing. Okay, but this was that, the essential element to what I just read to you was the 7 years of experience in the suppression industry. Okay.
Were you grandfathered into that license?
Excuse me?
Were you grandfathered into that license, or is that?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I was not grandfathered in. I had to pass the qualifications of the 7 years, okay, experience, practical experience, plus I had to pass a very difficult test that included sprinkler technology, and it was mostly sprinkler technology.
That what you just read, I think, was in one of your applications as well, and we I think it was, and we can screen share that if the board would like to see that from the original source, and if you want, if that's what you want to see.
Yeah, well, I only gave you the license, the New York City license. I didn't give you the statute that established the license, I believe.
I thought it was in there somewhere, but
Right, we just have the copy of the license. Right, we don't have what he just read.
yeah, as I know, I read it somewhere, and that's what it reflects.
No,
the
but
7 years.
but if you want, I could probably try to do that now. Okay, I'm under oath. I read that to you word for word. I'm not going to perjure myself. You could choose to believe me. Didn't sound like I just made that up on the fly, I hope.
Mr. Chair, can I recommend that we table this application or decision pending further information or gathering further information on this?
Like I say, as the meeting's going on, I'm over here with my other laptop trying to, there's, I don't know, I don't remember, there was a couple applications, Mr. Savino, but I don't remember, one had like 42 pages. I mean, there's quite a few pages to read through here. And I don't know if, I read through them, but I'm re-looking at them again. I'm down to your company's brochure part there as, as the meeting was going on, not trying to be rude or anything, but I'm trying to, multitask here. Is that a motion to?
I'm just wondering if we should entertain a motion to table this pending further investigation.
In all fairness to Mr. Savino, like I say, it's the review panel that was set up with the Department of Labor, Department of Consumer Protection, and myself. Your application was denied, which you're well aware because you received a letter. This is the board is digesting all this information today. So I'm leaning towards the fact that, yeah, that table it for them to review and digest the information that's provided by you to give you a fair assessment.
Yeah, I'd rather a fair trial here, you know?
Well, it's not a trial, but it's.
No, I know, I understand, but I'm just in reference.
No, but I mean, it's like I say, it was a lot, when I reviewed it, and like I say, it's it's not cut and dry.
Well, unfortunately, the word experience is not clearly defined in the regulations, okay? It's basically a subjective term, and I think there is a certain amount of subjectivity in that. But just getting back to your point with regard to that, yeah, it was reviewed and it was rejected. Again, I indicated that it was incorrect because 4 out of the 6 items that they actually, almost all of them, where they said no equivalent out-of-state license, that was incorrect, and the other items they had requirements for the F2 license, which I am not applying for.
No, but I think what the response was for the F2 was the fact that that's the prerequisite for the F1, is to hold that for 2 years.
Not in accordance with the regulations or the statute. It's not.
It says that or.
It's one of the pathways, but it's not. There's an or requirement. There's an or pathway.
I understand that.
Excuse me?
I understand that.
I'd like to second the motion to table this for further review.
Discussion? All in favor of tabling this for the board members to review further?
Aye.
Signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
any opposed? All right, so Mr. Savino, in all fairness, they'll just, they'll review it and we'll get back together and come to a decision.
The only thing I would ask is there anything in the meantime that you would like me to send you to support my case?
I would, the only thing I would say is if we can get documentation, something, maybe a statute, New York's and or New Jersey's, what their requirement is for their license. So that if it's show equivalent, same equivalency as the state of Connecticut, then
Okay.
I think that gives you in my eyes, it's giving you an equivalency requirement.
Okay, I can get that to Ms. Lehman. And the only thing that I would ask that if you're tabling it, and there was some discussion, and that I be permitted to participate in any kind of discussion like I had today. Okay, that there not be like a closed door meeting and then a decision.
Yeah.
We don't hold closed door meetings. We don't go in.
Okay.
We don't go into executive session.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so I'll give Ms. Lehman the requirements for the New Jersey and state license, and then once you guys review it, then I guess we could reconvene and have a decision.
Well, and also I would feel more comfortable if you could, like say, even in your own, notarized statement, say I worked on the First World Trade Center, installing the fire protection from, whatever, dates and duties. If you follow what I'm saying, I worked on it. Again, it's a notarized statement. It's a sworn statement. So that would go to, to your benefit for,
Okay,
I mean, you understand where I'm coming from, Mr. Savino?
sure. Yes, I can.
Like I say, it's, as far as the related instruction, I guess
I don't feel there is enough related, in my own personal opinion, instruction on the whole general sprinkler installation, all the systems. He seems to work in a general area that the F3 and F4 covers. And you got to look at the big picture. He might be great, as he tells us and everything, to go install these systems in buildings, But he could also be doing the next high rise in Stamford, Connecticut, the wet system with his workers, employees. And here's a guy who has very little experience installing it. He's told us he's going to be down there doing this. And I think we need to look at it in another area than to just, that's my opinion.
One thing I will add, we're a union contractor, okay? So, and part of being a business person and having a reputation is ethics, okay? And what I mean by that is I'm not claiming that I know everything about everything, okay? So I'm smart enough to know that the things that I don't know, that I get to people that do know, all right? If I don't know how to do something, and I tell my employees the same thing for safety reasons, if there's something you're not comfortable with, you don't know what you're doing, stop right there. Don't do it, okay? So again, I don't know everything about everything, but I do know enough that when it comes to life safety and things like that, to get the right people that know what they're doing. So again, we're licensed, we're union contractors. So I hire union journeymen, and that's what I would do in the state of Connecticut, the same thing, okay? People who have gone through. Again, I don't think I'm going to be out in a high rise in Connecticut hanging pipe. I'm not saying, I'm 67 years old with a bad back. I'm not hanging any more pipe. My pipe hanging days are over. But one thing I can promise you, I will never do anything to put anybody's safety in jeopardy or to do something that is dishonest or unethical. That I can promise you.
And just, I know Karen has her hand up, but that's the main concern of this board, is to make sure that the person out there that's, you know, installing, and in your case, with the contractor's license, is the most qualified.
Yeah,
Karen, go ahead.
if you pick up the phone and call the FDNY or the state of New Jersey and you mention my name, you're going to hear nothing but extremely positive things about my character. And that's what I think counts the most. Not whether I know how to hang a 6-inch pipe or not, okay? That is really the most important thing I think that you need to look at. And like I said, pick up the phone, call the FDNY and say, hey, anybody down there know Frank Savino? And you'll probably get plenty of people that know me.
All right. Karen, you have your hand up?
Right, I just wanted, before we did move on, I just want to make sure it was Keith Flood that made the motion to table, and the person that seconded that motion was?
Wayne, I believe.
That's what happens when I look away for a minute. It was Wayne?
Wayne Roderick, yes.
That's what I thought. Okay, all right.
Yes.
And it was unanimous to table the application, and are we tabling until the application supplies us with
Well,
more
that would probably
information,
be best if, as soon as, you know, when Mr. Savino provides the information to you, you forward it to the board members, and we could then, you know, excuse me, set up
Okay.
a meeting,
Okay,
you know, special meeting of the board to review the new information.
and you would like him to supply more information about the licenses in New Jersey and New York that he holds, and then also it would be helpful maybe to have an additional letter with dates and duties of employment to dig a little bit deeper about his work experience,
Right.
relating exactly to the scope of work of the F2.
The scope of work, the
Yeah.
dates and duties for,
Right,
you know,
okay.
on-the-job training and related instruction. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savino.
Thank you for taking the time with me today. I really appreciate that.
That's
Bye.
what we're here for.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 All right. Is Mr. Israel with us, Karen, or can we proceed to the?
Yep. Can you hear us, Mr. Israel?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Israel.
So, should I just tell you a bit about myself? You want? Can I start? Should I start? Can I start?
Let me
Oh, go
just,
ahead.
David Israel is applying for an F1. You know, again, he was back in April on the 12th when the panel met. It was denied. He must show work experience with dates and duties of employment and his related instruction in that field. And again, that's all. I just wanted to bring the board up to speed because it was the panel that had denied it. So if you have further information, Mr. Israel, please
Yeah,
provide.
yeah,
Let me swear
Hang
in.
on a second. I believe you have to be sworn in.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Ms. Yeah, Paul.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Israel, if you could please raise your right hand. And do you solemnly swear that the evidence you are about to give concerning the case now in question shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty or perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
So I feel I've done somewhat of a poor job in the application, and I appreciate the time to speak to the board. So my grandfather started this company in 1933. I hold a New York City license, a New Jersey license, a Nassau County license, a Suffolk license, and many other licenses in the townships in Long Island. I started working in the shop here at 13. I ran an Oster threader. I made blueprints. I worked on a service truck when I was young. I spent about 4 years in the field working installation on various jobs. In the 80s, during a summer in 1980. And I'm not sure what the licensing requirement was, but we installed the fire protection at Champion and Stamford, and I spent the summer there doing the coordination, between the trades. I currently am on the license. I hold a similar position. I'm on the licensing board of New York City, where I review license applicants. Trustee of the Mechanical Contractors Association, and I'm a member of the board of the MCA. My experience runs to, as I said, I've cut, threaded, hung pipe, and I was a draftsman for many years. I was an assistant super, I was a super, a project manager, and now I'm the president and owner of the company. We have over 400 employees. We do all manner of fire protection. We did the entire World Trade Center, installation, all the buildings, Hudson Yards, Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, Madison Square Garden, and all manner of installation. We do fire extinguisher, we do fire alarm. I calculated myself. I went and took a class to learn how to do clean agent and did do calculations on FM systems. I do the continuing education required for all of the licenses that I have. I feel maybe I should have maybe done a better job in making you aware of the field experience that I have in terms of actually pulling wrenches and doing installation work when I was younger. To be fair, I don't do that anymore. But I've done every single facet or every manner of job related to the fire protection industry. I don't know if you have any questions or if there's other information I could provide. I could provide potentially. I think a couple of the foremen are alive that I worked under back in the day, because in studying the information more closely, I understand that the installation portion is important, and I understand it's a bit different from having a conceptual understanding versus having an installer's perspective. But my grandfather was very much about the field, and we obviously, things have changed a lot. There's a lot of technology. We have a lot of technology that we've invested in, but I am personally sensitive and understand that all of the greatest ideas in the world don't really has to run through to the installation, the quality, and the understanding of how those systems work and what it takes to do that. I feel that my experience, I'm 62. It's like 62 years in the fire protection business, because it's really the only thing I really ever knew. My father's passed. So it's me at this point, and I have a 27-year-old son who's here. And we are a union contractor. I have great respect, for the state of Connecticut. I understand that you have your own regulations. It's a stringent process in Connecticut. I feel New York City is too, and for me, it's a privilege to be on that license board. And in a way, I feel we're in the last week or two understanding. Trying to understand your perspective, and I guess I don't fully because I'm not there, that I probably didn't provide enough of that background information for you to fully understand my experience and why I'm applying for a license in Connecticut.
Mr. Israel, this is Chairman Waskowitz. I'm going to ask you the question. Did you complete a bona fide apprenticeship?
No.
Not at all.
Yeah, as to be fair, the son of an owner, they put me out in the field, and I was trained. I didn't go through the union apprenticeship, but I was put with our most experienced foreman and, trained in how to handle wrenches, how to, the difference between, shields, toggle bolts, SAMI screws, all of that stuff. But, it was important to my father that I had the field experience. But, the way it is in New York, if you're an owner per se, they'll put you out in the field. They'll let you be out in the field. It's like a hole in it. So, but the answer to your question is no, I didn't go through the apprenticeship, but I feel I went through an equivalent apprenticeship, if you will, working alongside some very skilled and talented mechanics in getting a good understanding, of the ground up of what the installation, what's required. And to understand that, getting the information comes like the field is sometimes is more important than what they're equally important. You need to understand hydraulic design and conceptual design. I mean, I could talk you through 2-zone systems, gravity tank, check valve, pressure reducing valves, all of the things that go into designing a high rise or even a small system. But on the other hand, it was important to my father that I had the field experience. But to answer your question, I know that was a roundabout answer. No, I didn't go through an apprenticeship, but I do feel like I had equivalent training and that I worked for a long time in the field, in service, and also on installation projects.
Could you or would you be willing to provide a notarized letter from either anybody that could attest to the 8,000 hours of experience and the related instruction that you received in the fire protection?
Yeah, I think some of those foremen are alive, that I worked under. I could think of, Greg Moriarty and Peter Corrigan, some of the guys who trained me, and would a notarized, because I'm the owner of Rail. I mean, I'm willing to make a sworn statement also on some of the projects that I worked on, but I could also probably speak to some of those. I have to reach out, they're retired, and have them write something on my behalf. I think I could provide that.
Well, I'm just saying, because like I say, I hate to use the word equivalency, but it goes to the equivalency. If you haven't served an apprenticeship, and it's one of the considerations that is allowed in the state of Connecticut, is notarized statements stating your dates and duties of employment, as well as the
I will provide those. I will provide a statement of my own, and I will reach out to some of the foremen that I worked under for those statements and submit those.
Is the board in agreement of waiting to receive those for review?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea if we do the same thing we did with the earlier one and we do them both together at the same time.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
I would encourage, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I would encourage you. And I understand, Connecticut is, that your responsibilities are to protect the public and to make sure that licenses go into the correct hands. I don't take any of this lightly, but as I said, I'm licensed in all the adjoining states, and anybody in New York would speak, I think, to the character of, what Rail means, what we are as a company, what we represent. and the kind of work that we do. Look at the Guardia Airport, the new piece that was built, the hardest, the most complex, installation, Museum of Natural History, Metropolitan Museum, Whitney Museum, Guggenheim Museum. That's the stuff, those are the projects that we're tasked with. We don't cut corners. I can only have one bad day in my life as an installer, and that's kind of the end of your career. We dot the I's and cross the T's. And in the end, the work that we do, and it's not about, saying a lot of names, it's because in the end, people trust me. And trust us to do the right thing. And in the end, what we're doing in this interview and what I do for a living is protect the public. So I don't take it lightly. I will provide what you're asking for, but I just thought it was maybe important to say that out loud.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying there, but and I'll ask a question to you, Mr. Israel. Does Rail Sprinkler have any F1 Connecticut license holders in their employ?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, okay. All right.
We understand what the requirements are. Like in Nassau County, for example, you need type 1 and type 2 installers. New York City is different. You need a journeyman, different states have different requirements. Not being, I'm not looking, I want to go through the front door and I want to, put one foot in front of the other.
But you also understand our concern, because like I say, New York State does not have a license,
Right.
fire protection license statewide. They're basically local licenses, if I may use that term, when you say Nassau County or New York City or whatever.
Well, I do have Jersey State.
Well, no,
I've taken about 30 tests. The problem in New York is town of Huntington requires a license. ISIP requires, even at this point, I'm still studying and taking tests for, different, because New York is fragmented. It's better and worse. I mean, your system's probably better, but for me, in a way, I'm constantly having to study the code and, I'm kind of back in school all the time. I mean, I just passed Huntington like 3 weeks ago, and I still, I'm still nervous sitting down. Not because I don't know the material, because it's back to school. But I do appreciate what you're saying. That New York is fragmented.
Well, Connecticut used to be many, many years ago. I mean, I've been in since 1970, but prior to that, they had the local, the city licenses, and it was an unfortunate thing because again, it's revenue for the towns or whatever. And they finally, the state of Connecticut made it a uniform license across the board for the entire state, which eliminated the local licenses, which it's an advantage to you as a contractor to not have to go to every town and apply for
I appreciate that. I'm not sure in 1980 what the rules are, but for an entire summer, I drove, exit 7, got off and went to Champion every single day, to work on the drawings, to work on coordination. I'm not sure what the rules were then, because, I was just a kid, doing what I was told, but we were working up there. So we must have had a license at some point. I just don't know.
Well, your company you were in Stanford Town Center. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, the Champion paper was
a
project at the time. I mean, so I worked on the mechanical coordination of just all the overlays of all the trades at that time. It was summer, but I was involved with watching the field a bit, but that was before I was kind of full-time installing. But it was just some of what I went through. Just driving up to Connecticut every single day to do the job.
Yep. All right, so we provide that information to Karen Lehman, our secretary, the secretary, and she'll get it, disperse it to the board members, and we'll get together again when we get all the information from both parties, or, because we have another similar situation.
Okay, I'll do that. If you need anything else, I know that my office is called 100 times, and I'm sorry about that. But if you need anything else, please let me know. Or if there is a follow-up question, of course, I make myself available to you if there, were any other concerns or it just wasn't quite clear. But I thank you for your time, and I will provide it. I'll make it say by the end of next week, provide that affidavit and a notarized letter from myself.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
I make a motion, we table action on Mr. Israel until we review the additional information.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Any
thank you very
opposed?
much. Good day, everyone.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, motion carried. All right, let's move.
Paul, do you have?
Yeah, just want to, just for the board's reference, Mr. Israel's application includes a lot of information about the license requirements that he holds. So New York City, like we were talking about earlier, those are listed in his application, so you can see those requirements. Just for when we come back to this, just wanted the board to know.
Well, that would be in addition to Mr. Savino's case as well, right? Because he has New York City also.
Yep. So this is the printout for the New York City Master Fire Suppression Piping Contractor's License. So you can find it in this application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's, we might as well finish the new business and then we'll get back to the regular meeting. Again, there was an application review, April 12th. April 12th was James Casertano. He applied for an F2. He had a letter from 669 apprenticeship completion. He was approved, and the other two were Mr. Israel and Mr. Savino, which were both denied, and you heard the term, the reasons they were both denied. There was an application review on May 9th, and it was a Bradley Tucker. He applied for an F2. He also had a apprentice completion letter, and he was approved. That was it for the one for this month coming up. It's this month. This meeting was pushed up, so there'll be another application review in June. Any questions? All right, let's get back to the regular schedule. The minutes. Everybody's received a copy of the minutes of
Take a motion.
is there a second? I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at the screen. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? I just have one thing. There was omitted from the minutes there. I don't know, Richard had instructed Karen to contact Keith Flood. And that was under, I believe, new business. And Keith is here with us today, so, thanks to Karen for reaching out. I'd like to make that correction. So all in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes accepted, unanimous. Comments? Any comments? Persons present today?
Yeah, this is Paul. Oh, sorry.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, it's okay. So I know earlier, I think it was last week or the week before, Karen had sent the board an email about a potential step down for an enforcement action. And I know there was some confusion about what a step down is. So I just wanted to explain that real quick. So when we're doing an enforcement action, there's sometimes an occasion, if there's a real technical aspect to the case, where we would ask a board member to step down and participate in a compliance meeting with the respondent and then potentially serve as an expert during the hearing itself. So in reconsideration of my request, this case really does not have a technical aspect to it. I mean, a real technical aspect that a board member could help with. It's more of a pretty straightforward regulatory issue. So I don't think I need a step down, but in the future, you might get a request from me asking if a board member would like to step down and assist with an enforcement. I don't need one for this one, but in the future, you might get that. So that's just an explanation for you all. Thank you.
Right, and then, so this was discussed back, way back under Commissioner Harris when they established the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, that if there was a case come up where, just to reiterate what Attorney Grabowski had said, but that a board member would have to step down and recuse himself. He couldn't hear the case. So he would, because he'd have prior knowledge, he would be tainted basically. So he couldn't hear the case. So that's what the step down is, because I know I saw the emails going back and forth there. Is it permanent or whatever? But I thought, again, I'll ask you, Paul, so it's not required for this hearing that's coming up, or is that hearing been canceled?
No, the hearing, so we have to do a compliance meeting first, which is we meet with the licensee, give them a chance to provide additional information and explain themselves. And then we would schedule a hearing after that compliance meeting. So I would say, in the next month or so is likely when we'll schedule a hearing, probably sometime in July. But this hearing is more of a straightforward regulatory issue, so it doesn't deal with the technical aspect of the trade. So I wouldn't say that a board member is necessary for it. That's my opinion anyways. But if a board member would like to step down and be, a part of that compliance meeting, they certainly can. I think there's an opportunity here if they would like to do that.
I guess
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What's involved with stepping down? Is it a formal process and do you have to be reappointed, or how does that process work?
It's really not a formal process. So you would, you would agree to step down, and then, but when the hearing comes, you just recuse yourself from the hearing. So there's really not much more to it than that.
Okay, and then when that procedure is open or process is completed, then you would just go back to your normal service on the board.
Correct. Yeah. So I guess the word step down, the phrase is a little confusing because it sounds like you're stepping down entirely from the board, but that's not the case. You're stepping away for this specific enforcement action.
No, I know essentially it's a minor issue, the step down, but I just didn't know if it was a formal process. That's all.
Sure.
Well, if I may, in the past, we haven't had, this board hasn't heard, I don't think Tony and I may be the only ones on this board that have participated in a hearing. Years ago, we'd have the meeting and it'd be a hearing scheduled. So that person that stepped down would be participant for the whole meeting, with the exception of that one issue, just to make it clear that he would just have to recuse himself. We had hearings where a board member was either involved or whatever, he had to recuse himself from that portion of the meeting. So that just, if that clarifies it.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. So, I don't know if this hearing would be specially scheduled or it would become, the next scheduled meeting is a September 8th. I don't know if that would wait till then or what. That's we're at the mercy of the board, the state of, the Department of Consumer. So.
Hopefully we would schedule a special meeting for this one sooner than September, but there's timing elements under the statutes of when we have to give them notice. They have to have this compliance meeting. So that's like a first step, and then we would schedule after that. And there's another notice period before a hearing. And we have to make sure all the board members have a date available. So it's hard to say whether it'll be before September or not. I'd like that, but we will certainly see. Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving right along. DCP Investigative. division report. I see that Director Brown is present, and Senior Inspector Hamel, which I didn't expect to see either of you because we received the email this morning that there was no cases, none open, none closed. So, but I'll turn the floor over to the two of you, Director Brown.
Pamela Brown, Investigations Director. Janita's going to report out. I actually have a meeting that I need to jump onto at 10:30. So Janita's here. You're in good hands.
Yeah, we know that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I will always appear because there'll always be a question, even if there's nothing really to report out. For the 2-month time period, as you all know, from March 1st of 2022 to the end of April 30th, 2022, we did not receive any cases and we did not close any cases. That does not mean that any cases we received prior to that have been closed, because if they had been, they would show up on this report. So we have files that we are investigating and still continue to investigate and moving forward. There are files in legal, as Attorney Grabowski told you, and what the status is that we have to go through for that process. If anything from May 1st through this time frame of June 1st or June 2nd, I believe it's June 2nd today, apologize for the wrong date, this will end up being part of anything received and closed between May 1st through June 30th will appear on the July 1st or 2nd, on the July 1st report that I will write. I will be running for this 2-month time period for the boards, because most of the boards meet, every other month. So I will run that report then. Just so everybody understands, we are out there, even though we had an inspector, Jack Corduna, retire March 31st. We're waiting for his position to be posted. And we are out doing inspections out in the field. So if you have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
I don't. Does any board member have any? That being said, we thank you, Senior Inspector Hamel. Have a good day.
You too, Mr. Chairman, and to all the board members. Thank you.
Take care. Stay healthy.
Thank you, sir. You too.
All right. Old business. Under old business, we have the backflow prevention device issue. Bring the board up to speed. I attended the plumbing board meeting via Zoom. And that was back in April 21st. Everybody, all the board members were notified. I was hoping it would have been at least another board member participation. Basically what happened, there was much discussion. And to give you the synopsis, the 5-cent review there, it was tabled to the July 28th meeting. They wanted to look it over and but some of the board members were very plumbing board members are very firm on their position that they think it's the backflow on a fire protection system should be installed by a plumber. So again, that next meeting is scheduled for July 28th. Hopefully some other board member could participate as well and voice their concerns. So, any questions? All right, that's it on the old business, unless there's any other old business. We've already conducted new business. Correspondence? None? Comments?
We do have somebody here as an attendee. His name is Jeff Kastner. So you can let me know if you wanted to have him speak.
What's his name, Karen?
Jeff Kastner, Castner.
Spell that one more time, please.
Yeah, it's Jeff Kastner, Castner.
Okay, Kastner, all right. What's it regarding, or?
Let me have him, I'm gonna allow him to speak so he can let us know. Can you
Okay,
hear us, Jeff?
he's on mute.
Yeah, he is on his end. Let's see, let me try. Oh, you were off mute for a second. Can you hear us?
He was off mute, now he's back on mute.
Right.
Jeff, if you're on a computer,
Jeff, are you there, Jeff?
hit the bottom left corner for unmute.
Oh, how about now?
There you
Right.
go.
Got
There
you,
you go. We got it.
loud and clear.
The board was wondering if did you want to speak? Did you have a question? Or were you just observing?
I was just observing. I did respond to you with some documentation, but I hadn't received a response. So I don't know whether it was still working its way through.
It is. You submitted an application and then I asked for more documentation. You sent that to me. Yeah, it's still working its way through. That will, I need to look at it and see if there's anything else that you need, and then it will go to the application review group.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I was just kind of observing today. I wasn't. I didn't have anything to add.
Okay. All right, great.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so that concludes the business that I have in front of me. I want to thank Keith for rejoining us. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you, stranger.
Appreciate it.
Thank everybody for attending. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 10:37.
Stay well, everyone. Stay safe
Bye,
and
everyone.
see you next meeting.
All right, stay safe and
Take care, everybody.
have a good 4th, and won't see you